Am I the asshole for charging my brother rent to stay in my guest room even though he's struggling financially? So my 28F, younger brother, 24M, recently moved in with me because he lost his job and couldn't afford his apartment anymore. I have a decently sized house with a guest room, and so I initially told him he could stay for a couple of months while he got back on his feet. However, I made it clear that I expected him to contribute financially once he found work. He's now been here for 3 months now, and while he's applied to some jobs, he spends most of his time playing video games and hanging out with friends. I told him I was going to start charging him $300 per month in rent starting next month, whether or not he has a job, because I feel like he's taking advantage of me. He got really upset and said I was being heartless since he's struggling and I don't need the money. My parents are also on his side and said it's wrong to profit off family in a tough time. For context, I do have a stable job and don't need the money, but I feel like he should be held accountable instead of freeloading. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. Your brother is taking advantage. Maybe your parents can take him in and support him? Not the asshole. You've given your brother plenty of time to get back on his feet, but he's not making much effort. If he can game and hang out, he can job hunt. $300 per month is super reasonable. It's about responsibility, plus it was disclosed he'll eventually have to contribute. If your parents disagree, they can take him in. You're not being heartless, just setting boundaries. Personally, I think he's avoiding financial responsibility, and since the original agreement was that he'd pay once he had a job, he thinks not having one means he's off the hook. Leaving him with no motivation to work as he's living comfortably off your back. Stay firm on your decision. Send him home to mom and dad. He spends most of his time playing video games and hanging out with friend. He's just taking the piss at this point. If he was working hard to get a job, it would be one thing, but you're not obligated to give him a place to hang out with his mates like it's school break. Not the asshole. And just be warned, this is a slippery slope. Just because you don't need the money doesn't mean you are suddenly obligated to support everyone in your family. You do one favor and suddenly you are the go-to person for everyone and everything. I feel bad for posting this because we get along so well otherwise, but whenever this comes up in discussion I'm made to look like this evil person, and I really don't think that's fair. It's gotten to a point where I've kinda just had enough loudly crying. Not the asshole. Does $300 even cover the increase in costs now that he is there? I imagine groceries and utilities have gone up. You are not doing him any favors by letting him stay for free. It allows him to get complacent, not find a job and not move on with his life. It's very kind of you to take him in. It's a very slippery slope. I've seen a lot of relationships damaged in situations like this. Am I the asshole, or is my partner just forcing me to conform? Am I the asshole, or is my partner just forcing me to conform to their principles and values? Hi all, I need some third paw on this matter. For context, my partner and I have been dating for slightly under a year now, but recently we had the stupidest fight I've ever had in my entire dating life. My partner is a great cook and likes to cook for me. It helps that he is a non-picky eater and eats everything and anything. For me, yes, I admit I am picky, but I do give things a try before totally deem the food items as likable or ew. So recently my partner made vegetable pancakes and included shiitake mushrooms in them. My partner knows that I absolutely hates it in any dish, but he loves it, so I don't mind if he puts it in, cause when I eat it I'll just pick it out. I even provided alternative mushroom options for him to include. Though by my preference I rather not have any mushrooms to be included, but as a compromise and cause I love him, so I force myself to accept alternatives. We kept having these repeated fights where he mentions that when I pick things out of my food, it makes my appreciation for his cooking as conditional. Let me just highlight, I repeatedly thank him for cooking every time, hugs him and even do the dishes sometimes. It also shows that I have no table manners and I must be spoiled by parents while growing up, which makes me feel very frustrated and puzzled at the same time. I don't do this in public settings or during family meals, only when it's just the two of us. During group meals I make a conscious effort to take a bite out of everything and only take repeated ones at the one I like. He said that if he ever did what I did when he was a child, his parents would have scolded him and thrown him out, which to me sounded like a trauma response and him projecting onto me. I told him we're two consensual adults and I'm not stopping him from putting in the mushroom, but I just prefer not to eat it. I don't make him cook two different versions, I just force myself to eat it or I'll pick them out when I can. He refuses to let me pick them out and somewhat insists that I should follow him and be grateful that someone even bothers to cook for me, to which I feel that at this point I feel borderline suffocated to have to pretend to like some ingredient in a dish when I really don't like it. So am I really the asshole? Is there a way around this? Not the asshole. My husband is the opposite of a picky eater. The man will eat anything. Except mushrooms. Pineapple and ham pizza? Check. Anchovies on crackers? Check. Mushrooms? Not no but hell no. So guess what I don't do? I don't cook things with mushrooms in it. I wouldn't ask him to eat mushrooms. I wouldn't make a main course that has mushrooms in it. I love beef stroganoff. Grilled mushrooms on a steak? Sign me up. But I can have those when he's not with me or order it when we go out. Why? Because it's not about whether or not he has manners. It's about taking into consideration the needs of a partner. Your partner is one step down from weaponized incompetence. He is deliberately sabotaging your food so that he can make a big deal out of it. Not the asshole. He knows you don't like mushrooms. He's being an ass for no reason. I told him we're two consensual adults and I'm not stopping him from putting in the mushroom, but I just prefer not to eat it. I don't make him cook two different versions, I just force myself to eat it or I'll pick them out when I can. That's totally reasonable and there's no reason for him to pick a fight with you over it. Break up. This guy is manipulative and controlling. First it's food, next it will be sleep, your clothes, your friends. His reaction is completely unreasonable. You could easily turn it back on him. You've told him you don't like this, it's rude and insulting for him to keep feeding it to you. But don't do that, this guy could be dangerous. Not the asshole. Dude's got control issues, and seems to think it's acceptable to put you down simply because you don't like the same foods he likes. Might want to stop and take a look at whether he uses a similar approach in other areas in which he disagrees with you, because this is definitely not healthy. Not the asshole. He knows you won't like certain foods, so really you'd think he'd be able to predict what will happen when he cooks with them. I think you're onto something about his childhood. I don't know if I'd necessarily go as far as to call it a trauma response, but he's definitely inherited an unhealthy attitude from his parents. My stepmom also used to cook meals with ingredients she knew I didn't like whenever I visited as a kid, and it actually became a huge issue. But now that I'm an adult I know how it feels and I wouldn't put other people through that purposefully. You're both adults, and he's treating you like a child. As the person who is the primary cook in my home, I don't cook things that I know others in my home don't like. If I do, because it's something that I like, then I provide an alternative for the others in my home if picking something out isn't an option. You're not the asshole for not liking mushrooms, and not complaining and simply picking them out. He continues to try to force them onto you, despite knowing you don't like them. He's the asshole. You're allowed to like, or dislike, foods according to your own tastes. Am I the asshole for leaving my sister-in-law's house on Christmas and getting cussed out by her husband? Hi everyone, I would really like to get some insight from everybody on what happened at our family Christmas. On the 23rd my sister-in-law had messaged me and told me that they are throwing a small Christmas party, and she told me that her sister-in-law and her in-laws and her parents are all going to be joining them and they would really like for us to come as well. Very specifically she named everybody who was going to be there. This will be relevant later. Later that night I showed my husband the text messages and said it would be really nice if we joined them for Christmas as his whole family doesn't get along, and it would be nice for his mom to see at least some of the siblings interacting. On Christmas Day I woke up early to make some things to bring over to their house and wrapped up the gifts that I had prepared for everybody. As we approached their house we saw a vehicle that belonged to a person that me and my husband both don't get along with and have had major problems with in the past. I told my husband that maybe it's just a car that looks like his because his sister knows that we would not come over if we knew that this person was going to be there. We decided to walk in and give the gifts and say hi to everyone, and both agreed that if said person was invited that we would just come up to his sister and brother-in-law and let them know that we are actually going to be leaving. Well, unfortunately for us he was there and we didn't want to make a big scene, so I came up to his sister in the kitchen and said I'm really sorry that we're leaving and that if I knew that he was invited we would have just told her right away that we weren't going to come, and I felt very bad for making the situation uncomfortable. She looked really disappointed, but understood and decided to walk us to the door. At this point, everything was fine until her husband ran in and started yelling and cussing and calling us names. This was pretty out of character for him, but also very inappropriate nonetheless, especially because in my opinion, we didn't do anything wrong by leaving Christmas when we are uncomfortable with being around someone we don't like and wanted to avoid any conflict and not make a scene. He kept screaming and calling us names and telling us that he can invite whoever he wants to his house, which we both never told him that he couldn't. The screaming continued and his kids-in-laws and his parents all came to see what was going on. Me and my husband quietly put our shoes on and he slammed the door in our face. So I'm curious, does this make us the assholes for leaving Christmas when we were unaware that a person we do not get along with was invited as well, especially when his sister went out of the way to text me a list of everybody who is gonna be there but somehow leaving this person out? Sounds like a deliberate ambush to make you the bad guys. Now you have 2 or more people to avoid. Maybe see if you can have a conversation with some of the other family, find out what Bill's problem is with you, the real one, not this BS. No, you were polite in leaving quietly and not attracting attention. He's right, he can have whoever he wants over. And you respected that and chose to leave. Not the asshole. The screamer appears to have wanted to blindside you with the icky guest. You calmly did the right thing, and he was being a total awe. I think you need to be done with him. Not the asshole. They knew you wouldn't and did this on purpose. Your brother-in-law can do whatever he wants and so can you. If you do talk, O would tell him that too and let him know you won't tolerate being ambushed and then yelled at ever again. So yes, you can invite anyone you want and I can make a decision to not come to your house ever again. Not the asshole. Sister deliberately left his name out of the text because she knew you wouldn't come if you had been pre-warned. You didn't make a scene, you politely excused yourself, you did nothing wrong. Not the asshole, but your SIL's husband is a huge one. He could have let you leave quietly, and instead he made a scene and made everybody uncomfortable. Would I be the asshole for buying a house without my husband's consent? I, 32F, have always wanted to have my own home. As many of us have. However, my husband, 32M, isn't entirely on board. It's not that he doesn't want a house. He talks about how nice it would be to have more space, to have a large backyard to garden, more rooms for our kids to play in, as to maybe even have an extra room to use. But he will not make decisions. Almost every big life decision we've had, he won't weigh in on. We need another car. What kind should we get? I get answers of why, this kind is good because ABC, this kind is bad because XYZ, but he refuses to tell me what he wants. So I buy the car I think works best. And if it turns out to be a poor decision or something breaks on it, then he just tells me why he would have chosen something different. Same with properties we've decided to rent. I'm finally in a place where it's financially feasible to buy a house. But I can't get his buy-in on anything. He won't tell me which houses he likes or doesn't like, just gives me pros and cons of each without working with me on it. This has been ongoing for nearly 3 years, and I'm tired of it. We have 3 kids, 7F, 5M, 2F, and are living in a 2BR apartment currently. The 2 older kids share a room and the younger one is in our bedroom. We are running out of space and will eventually need something bigger, and we currently have the opportunity. I can buy a home I like, with room for all of us with just my income and credit right now. Since he won't give me any input in either direction, I'm halfway considering just doing the house search, buying process on my own and telling him he can join if he wants. But I can't tell if that's just a dickish way to go about it. So, would I be the asshole if I just went ahead and bought a house I know we can afford, with only my money and credit score, without his input since he refuses to give it? Not the asshole. My dad was the same way to my mom. Basically forcing her to make all the decisions, while he held the right to criticize the decision if it turned out less than ideal. Think long and hard if this is the long-term marriage you want and then act accordingly. You would NBTA. But I think you owe it to yourself to give him one last chance. I am going to buy a house, either give an opinion and join in the process or stay out the way and no recriminations. YWNBTA, but I do think you should give it at least a try first. Hun, we really need to be thinking about moving into a house. I found a realtor and am planning to start looking at houses. I'd love for you to weigh in and participate, but I'm planning on doing it either way. And see how he reacts. It at least shouldn't be a secret that you're doing it. I always read posts like these and wonder how you are getting through life together. Does he participate in child-rearing decisions, or are you effectively a single parent too? I hate that so many people jump to divorce, but also, are you thinking about it? Not the asshole to anyone but yourself. Seems like he's trying to dodge consequences by never having to be the one to make the decision. But this is something that you guys should be doing together. Ultimately, if he won't tell you what he wants, you get to go with what you want. But you know that he will have some kind of weird "I told you so" no matter what you do. Do you actually like feeling this way every time he does it? You may want to consider chatting this out in couples therapy. YWNBTA, but I think you guys have some work to do. Not sure what state you are in, but assume it will be necessary to get your husband to sign off on something like a quit claim deed in order for you to close escrow. No point in asking a bunch of internet randos about this without talking with a realtor in your state first.